Hello everyone and welcome to Rainmakers Roundup. I am your host Mark Iorio, and today I have with me in studio John Reed. John is the principal at Pinnacle Consulting. Welcome, John. We're great to have you on the program.
Mark, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, good to have you.
Yeah,
Thanks
same.
for driving down.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. So, I look at your background, and it's in business development. We used to call it sales, but we don't call it anymore. We don't call it sales anymore. It's biz dev, right? But Pinnacle is a consulting firm that you founded a few years back.
Right, yes. So Pinnacle Consulting is my LLC. I'm managing director, and I provide what's termed fractional sales leadership services to
Sure.
small to medium-sized businesses.
Yep.
So that's what I do as part of my LLC.
So oftentimes, when you talk about sales, people have they have very varying opinions about sales and business development and how easy or how difficult it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you talk to small businesses, oftentimes, you're talking to the founder, I would imagine, right? Or the leadership team.
Right.
What are some of the things that you're dealing with when it comes to people understanding the value of having a fractional sales person like you?
Right. So typically it's the CEO or the founder that is leading sales in that maturity cycle where they've founded a company, they've created some new widget, whatever,
Yep.
service,
Yep.
and they by default are doing a lot of things. They're wearing a lot of hats, and sales is typically one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they find that they're smart people and they can do a lot of things and multitask, but they reach a point where they figure that, geez, if I could just shed this one responsibility to somebody that I can bring in on a part-time basis,
Mm-hmm.
that has the experience, the background, the processes, if you will, that can help me take my company to the next level, that's usually what the CEO and the founder is looking for.
Yeah. What do you think some of the biggest mistakes are that people make when they start in any sales process? What are you finding over the years?
Well, I guess a couple things. One, I try to look for an ability to make sure that you're mapping to the buying process. And sometimes that's overlooked. And it changes, or it's different, depending on the market and the clientele that you're targeting. But my background in corporate sales has been typically around large, complex buying entities. And that's not always the case, right?
Yeah.
Particularly in the SMB market, you might have a more simpler buying process. So make sure you understand your clients or your target market's buying process. Is it simple? There are contracts that are involved. You need to go to legal. Is there a master contract that needs to be put in place? There's a whole variety of things. And just make sure you understand that. And typically you would, but make sure that your selling process then maps into what that buying process is and set up. There's two things that I look for. I look for, is there a compelling event? So what's causing this prospect to make a decision to go do something?
Right.
What's the business driver behind that, and when is that compelling event due to take place? And then you set up your process from now until that point to try to map into their buying process.
It's not sometimes not that difficult if you do the fundamentals. I mean, the fundamentals of selling are, you go through first of all, you have to build your database of people.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the right messaging, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've got to actually do the work,
Yeah.
right? Mm-hmm. What happens oftentimes, where's the breakdown that you typically see with some of these CEOs that are wearing multiple hats, and they call you in and say, John, I need help.
Right.
What are some of the big gaps?
Yeah, I think there's a tendency for CEOs and founders to rely on their own personal network to develop business. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's where they usually get a lot of their initial business.
Sure.
But I think the breakdown occurs trying to make that transition out of that comfort zone where they know people, I can make a call and see if they can refer me, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing wrong with that. You should continue to do that. But trying to extend into getting new logos and business from people that you don't currently know is sometimes uncomfortable.
Do you actually do the work? I mean, when you're part of the sales acceleration program,
Right.
So, do folks like you actually go out and do the work, or do you train the folks inside to do the work?
Right. Yeah. Great question.
Yeah.
So my methodology, and I use sales acceleration, which is a consortium of like-minded other sales leaders
Yeah.
that own their own LLCs. We do the work. So we're not just going into a particular candidate or target SMB, for instance, and writing a report of what's wrong and what needs to be addressed and wishing them good luck.
Yeah.
We do the research, we do the due diligence to understand their issues, but then we're actually part of the solution that gets implemented. So we're leading the team if that's the case, or we're providing sales leadership certainly, but sales strategy. We're doing some hiring if that's what they need to do. So
Okay.
doing the analysis of what needs to get done and then putting a plan in place and executing on that plan is what we do.
And the fees are all different depending on the size of the client, how much engagement you have, and
Right.
is it typically a retainer or is it on a like an hourly rate? How do you typically charge?
It's usually based on the scope of the project.
Okay.
Right. So
Okay.
a full-blown sales VP for a year, that has a certain scope to it.
Sure.
Right. As opposed to, hey, just come in and help me hire some people or put sales incentive programs together. Those might be would be smaller engagements with more limited functionality associated with them.
Got it.
Yeah.
So your corporate background in sales, more complex selling processes, right? Led you to the point where you said, you want to do this on your own. What was that transition like?
Yeah, so it's a transition that I'm sure a lot of folks go through, right?
Sure.
So corporate America was great for me. Learned a lot, certainly, helped a lot of people along the way,
Yeah.
certainly clients and people that were part of my team. But like most people in corporate America, missed some of the soccer games and the recitals and so on, and you can't get that back, right?
Right.
And so I reached a point where, hey, let me take advantage of my experience and my skill sets and apply it a little differently, because now I'm into round 2. So my kids are starting to have kids of their own. I have 2 grandchildren, and
Good.
there'll be more on the way at some point, but I just want to do it a little differently and have better control over my calendar and the priorities that I put into my calendar. So the fractional world met that goal.
Sure. So, there's a certain love, there's a certain passion for, working in sales in a business development environment where, it's, some people like opening doors, some people like the hunt, some people like the art of the kill, and
Right.
where's the passion for you coming from? Why do you love what you do?
Right. So a couple things. It's a great question again. The thing that I enjoy the most is the coaching aspect of it, whether it's the one-on-ones, co-traveling with a salesperson, being part of a sales call, and then debriefing before and after. What are our objectives before? Okay, how did that go? What are some things that you think went well? What are some things that maybe we should have covered a bit better in the call? And then coaching them up so that they can improve. That one-on-one interaction with certainly somebody that's part of my team, and or with a customer directly or prospect is most enjoyable.
Yeah, I'll bet it is. Now, so I'm sure you've had a number of success stories, proud moments where you felt like, wow, this is, I not only love what I do, but I'm helping this business owner who is, they might be struggling with business development and sales. I mean, it's not an easy profession. Let's put it that way, John. I think a lot of people understand sales as, networking or, schmoozing, getting to know people. I hate that word, but I used it anyway.
Right.
But, getting to know people and that relationship building, but it's way more than that.
It is. All of what you said is part of it.
Yeah.
Right. And I would back up for a minute and say that sales is a noble profession. There's a lot of really great people that have made a career in sales. I would also point out that sales is a skill set that can be applied to almost any position in a company, right? If you're an accountant or an engineer or project manager, you're still selling per se. So acquiring those skill sets and applying it to whatever you love in your profession, I think is important. But to get back to your question around, what is it that that I have found enjoyable? What have I been able to do? So, an example would be, this is somewhat recent, where I was asked to come in and help a company get better traction on their target markets. And so one of the things that I look for is, for me to be able to affect change in the sales organization, there are some fundamental things that need to be in place from a marketing perspective.
Yep.
Market position, your target market, your ICP, your ideal customer profile, what are the personas, what's the messaging? And more importantly, and sometimes this is somewhat overlooked, it's the unique value proposition that you have, but what's the incremental value that you can deliver to your clientele above and beyond what might be in the market?
Sure.
So some of those things in a recent engagement, I had to take a focus on that were more marketing related, because the fundamentals weren't quite there. So we broke down the market into sub verticals. We broke down the messaging. We fine-tuned the target audience, because the founder and the owner was a bit broader in their focus.
Yeah.
They just needed to bring it more closely to 3, maybe 4 target markets, sub-verticals,
Sure.
when they were trying to address a broad out audience.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that you first try to focus on.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break, but we talk a lot about culture and the relationship that sales and marketing have with one another. But you nailed it. Everyone's in sales. I mean, when we do our workshops, I'll ask sometimes a question about that: who's in sales or who's in customer service? And most people put their hand down when the question about sales come up. But if I say who's in customer service, everybody raises their hand. It's no different. It's the same thing. And people, if they understand the value and the purpose of the organization, they can help sell.
Exactly right.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break.
You're looking pleased with yourself.
Not to brag, but I just switched to Verizon.
So you got an awesome network.
And when I switched, I got to choose the phone I wanted for free, not bragging.
You're bragging.
Oh, he's bragging.
Who, me? Never. Oh, excuse me. Hello, Your Royal Highness, sir.
Okay, that's a brag.
Hey, Mom, I gotta call you back.
Switch and choose the phone you want, like the incredible iPhone 14 on us.
On the network worth bragging about.
Verizon.
Welcome back to Rainmakers Roundup. I am your host, Mark Iorio. I'm with John Reed. John is the managing director of Pinnacle Consulting, LLC. But it's really, you just talked about touching on marketing, right? And that silo that you and I grew up with, right? The sales, marketing, finance, IT, administration silos. That can't happen, John. Everyone's got to be a part of sales.
You got to be part of the same team. Now, we have different responsibilities,
Yeah.
but I'll say it's amazing that there's more silos than there should be, right? Particularly sales and marketing. And sometimes it's, organizational structure, sometimes it's egos that get in the way, or, hey, this is my responsibility, and so, what are you doing treading on my... It really should be more cohesive. And I was involved in one situation not too long ago where marketing, in my opinion, and I mentioned, one of the first things I look at is, what are the marketing fundamentals that are in place
Right.
to take advantage of? And in this particular case, marketing was doing a great job. They had their target markets identified, their ICPs, they had the personas, they had ABM programs, account-based marketing programs going out,
Sure.
et cetera. I mean, they were clicking on most all cylinders. It was the sales side that was not really taking advantage of all the work that the marketing department was doing. So I was brought in to take a look at that. So why, what are you doing? I said, well, the stuff marketing sends us is not high quality. It doesn't really help us generate leads or certainly business. Mm-hmm. So some of the first things you look at are, what's the communication? There was no communication back to marketing.
Yeah.
Right? There was no feedback. They
Right.
weren't telling the marketing people, hey, this is good, this is bad, help me more in this area or less in this area. There was just no feedback, and they were not taking advantage of the messaging, so they were putting out their own emails and not really replicating what was going on. So the first thing is, let's get the two teams together. So I implemented a situation where, I was certainly part of the marketing meetings, but I was bringing the sales team in as well to help them communicate and to build that trust, because that's important.
Yeah.
You have to trust the people that you're working with, that they're going to provide the information and the content that you're looking for. So just putting that cadence together and having that feedback back to marketing was huge in getting them on the same page.
Yep, yeah. It's, we talk about culture even inside the sales organization, where you have, and this always bothered me, but in our business, what I do for a living is help teams work together in a more collaborative way. And a lot of times, John, I'll see sales organizations competing with each other. These guys and gals are competing with one another, rather than collectively competing with the competition. And when that happens, there's fractures. It's fragmented inside the sales organization. Have you seen that?
Yeah, every company is going to be slightly different, but you want to make sure that you have a culture of support.
Yeah.
Salespeople tend to be competitive just by nature, right?
Yeah.
And in doing so, you find that they hoard information, right? So we've seen that. So you want to encourage that sharing, and it's not always going to be a perfect world in that sense, but you want to encourage that the A players are sharing their successes and how they go about doing things to the folks that are coming up in the ranks, so that they've got, and so how do you do that? Well, you can you can certainly put them on a specialist list, for instance, or put them as an advisor, kind of elevate their position a bit and provide peer leadership to the folks that are coming up, so that they're looked at as, people that the new folks can look up to, other than just the organizational structure. So, there's the old adage that salespeople are motivated by two things, right? Fame and fortune, right? So the comp plan, they work their comp plan, and if they're recognized for their successes by their peers in particular, that's an incentive that they have.
They like that.
Yeah.
If you look back on your career, and you alluded to some things a few minutes ago about wanting to spend more time on the soccer field, or in recitals and so on. But aside from that, I understand that. Believe me. What would you do differently if you had to do it all over again? Would you change anything?
Oh boy. I think I made wise choices along the way. You know, life is a journey, and it's a series of decisions that you make.
Yep.
What would I do differently? I think that I would have maybe gotten my formal education. So I got my MBA in marketing some time ago, but I did it some period of time after I got my BS degree. So maybe getting that a little bit earlier, because some of the business oriented, my BS is in chemistry, which is a technical science, and had no formal education, I'll say, on the business world. Certainly not in selling. But I got into the business world. My first job was really part of the sales organization, so that's what really spurred me on. But getting that additional education, I think, earlier on would have been something that I think would have been helpful. Because there I got some of the financial aspects covered.
Yeah. I think aside from that, I mean, that chemistry background, what that university should have probably done was help cross-pollinate some of what you learned in your BS with some administrative tasks, like understanding marketing, understanding maybe the sales process, and maybe combining those two things. It's something that a lot of colleges and universities do not do.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Is that just expose, whether it's chemistry or whatever. Just have some cross-pollination, like you said, or just exposure to some other disciplines that might be helpful down the road. How to balance a checkbook,
That would be helpful.
Maybe that would be helpful, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So how about advice? When you were talking a few minutes ago about some of the younger guys that are coming, when I say guys, people coming up in the ranks, and having mentors or advisors or whatever. But if John Reed was giving advice to someone, what younger folk coming up in the ranks in the sales organization, what would you say?
Well, there's a number of answers to that, but one would be curious.
Yeah.
Always ask the second, third, fourth question when you get an answer. Why is that? How did that happen? Can you tell me the background of how you came to that conclusion, or whatever the topic might be?
Yeah.
Just be curious about your interactions with others, and certainly in business, because that's a skill set, particularly in sales, that I think can serve you well. Because we're not just selling. Again, my background is in the more complex, larger deals.
Sure.
We're not just selling something, but we're actually enabling our potential clients to buy, and that requires insight. It requires knowledge of their business. It requires building a trusting relationship with that new client, hopefully, a new client. And you're not going to get there unless you're engaged with them and unless you're showing curiosity about them as a person and their business.
Yeah, it requires a certain amount of emotional intelligence too, doesn't it? And empathy, so that if you're there across the table from someone and it's all about you trying to sell your service or product, you're not going to be curious.
Right.
You're really, all you care about is talking about you and your business.
That's right.
That's not going to help.
So if I could just add to that real quick. So being curious also leads to be prepared and do your research.
Yeah.
So if you're going into a certain vertical that you don't really know too much about, do your research.
Yeah.
Because you want to come to that first conversation with an informed opinion. The days of, so tell me what keeps you up at night, those are gone.
Yeah.
The people that you're talking to expect you to know something about their business and what the market demands are these days.
Yeah. I think a lot of people get lazy when it comes to selling. I think they think that it's you said it's a noble profession. It's a noble profession, but it's also a very insightful and curious profession where you've got to understand what's going on the other side. Not so much so that you think you know more than the prospect or the customer, but curious enough to know how you might be able to seriously help them.
That's right.
And so that's important. Let's talk about you for a second. You've had a pretty successful career, right? And then a few years back you start Pinnacle, and you latch on to Sales Acceleration, which is a great organization. They're all over the United States. I mean,
Right.
I don't know how many chapters there are, but
There's about 180 advisors.
Okay.
So I'm an advisor
Right.
utilizing Sales Acceleration, powered by Sales Acceleration.
powered by Sales Acceleration. And we know a number of folks around the area that are part of it as well, so it's a great organization. But thinking back in your career and the people that have influenced you and excited you about the things that you're doing, where's that inspiration come from?
Yeah. So I would say that, and this is probably an answer that many people would have, and that's my family.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
So my parents, unfortunately, I lost my father when I was 13, and so I only had, call it, 6, 7 years with him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But those 6 and 7 years, I look back on as being critical in helping me be the husband, being the father, being the man I am today, because
Yeah.
he was very influential in that short period of time. And then my mother, who took over as mom and dad,
Yeah.
she was a force to be reckoned with, and really helped me, get through some, tough times along the way.
Yeah.
And then, my family, my wife is just an incredible supporter of me, and she's just, keeps me out of trouble on a daily basis. So that, and my kids, I learn from my kids almost every day. So, but the common theme there, I think, is that there's a fortuitiveness, a self-reliance certainly, but an ability to, work through things that come up as obstacles.
Yeah.
Some call it grit, some call it, intestinal fortitude, whatever. But we're all going to run into situations that present obstacles
Yeah.
or challenges. And your ability to think through how best to work through them, work around them, or whatever, or avoid them, comes from the people that you surround yourself with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. That's great. Great. Thanks for joining.
Hey, Mark, appreciate it. Thank you.
It was
This
a
was
pleasure.
great.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. All right, that camera, if you could tell right here, tell everyone how to get in touch with you and Pinnacle Consulting.
Yeah, so John Reed, I'm on LinkedIn, John Reed, and my email address is jreed, that's the letter J, R-E-E-D, at salesacceleration.com. And shoot me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn, and let's talk.
Great. John, thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mark.
That was excellent. All right, folks, that is a wrap. Check out John. John is all over LinkedIn and in a bunch of networking groups too.
Exactly.
As well, right?
Yep.
So that's how we met. But check him out on LinkedIn and check out Sales Acceleration. Folks, we'll see you next week. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.